The autumn in Nashville had arrived earlier that year of 2023. Golden leaves danced across the Broadway sidewalks, carried by an icy wind that cut like a blade. It was early November, and 17-year-old Emma Catherine Sullivan pulled her thin, worn coat tighter around her swollen belly as she positioned herself at the corner of 4th Avenue and Broadway. The neon lights from the honky-tonk bars cast colorful shadows on the wet pavement, but Emma felt none of their warmth. In her hands, she held a small cardboard box filled with homemade peppermint candies, each one wrapped in crinkled cellophane she had saved from discarded packages. The sweet smell of sugar and mint mixed with the cold air, creating small clouds of vapor that disappeared as quickly as her hopes seemed to fade with each passing day. "Fresh homemade candy! Only $2!" she called out, her voice barely audible above the sounds of live music spilling from the nearby venues. Her breath formed small puffs in the frigid air, and she rubbed her free hand against her jeans, trying to generate some warmth. Emma had been on the streets for 3 months now, ever since her parents, Margaret and Robert Sullivan, had discovered her pregnancy. The memory still burned fresh in her mind, the look of horror and disappointment on her mother's face, the angry shouting from her father, a deacon at their local Baptist church in Franklin, Tennessee. "You've brought shame upon our family and our faith," her father had declared that terrible August evening, his face red with anger and embarrassment. "I won't have a daughter who lives in sin under my roof." Her mother, usually the mediator in family disputes, had simply turned away, tears streaming down her cheeks. "How could you do this to us, Emma? We raised you better than this." Those words had cut deeper than any physical wound. Emma had tried to explain about Marcus Thompson, her boyfriend of 2 years, how he had promised to marry her when they graduated, how he had said he loved her. But Marcus had disappeared the moment she told him about the pregnancy, transferring to a school in California and leaving her to face the consequences alone. Now, standing on this corner night after night, Emma felt the weight of her choices and the cruel reality of her situation. The baby inside her kicked gently, as if sensing her distress. She placed her hand on her belly, whispering softly, "It's going to be okay, little one. Mama's going to figure this out." The Covenant House downtown had given her a bed for the past month, but space was limited, and she knew she couldn't stay much longer. The social worker, Mrs. Jennifer Patterson, had been kind but honest about her options. "We can help you find a family for adoption, Emma, or we can assist you in finding resources for young mothers, but you need to decide soon." Emma had been making these candies since she was 12, learning the recipe from her grandmother, Dorothy Mae Sullivan, who had passed away 2 years earlier. It was one of the few skills she possessed that could generate income, and she spent her days in the shelter's small kitchen, carefully crafting each piece with the ingredients she could afford from her meager savings. As the evening grew colder, fewer people walked the streets. The tourists who usually frequented this area were bundled up and moving quickly between venues, not interested in stopping for candy from a pregnant teenager. Emma's feet ached in her worn sneakers, and the baby seemed to be pressing against her ribs, making breathing difficult. A police officer, Sergeant Michael O'Brien, had walked this beat for 15 years and had noticed Emma over the past few weeks. He approached her with a concerned expression, his hands tucked into his jacket pockets. "Emma, isn't it?" he said gently, his Irish accent still faintly detectable after decades in Tennessee. "You've been out here quite a while. Are you staying warm enough?" Emma nodded, trying to appear stronger than she felt. "Yes, sir. Just trying to make some money for the baby." Sergeant O'Brien's weathered face softened. He was a father of 3 daughters himself, and seeing Emma in this condition tugged at his heart. "Listen, there's a warming station open at the Methodist Church on 5th Street. They're serving hot soup tonight. Why don't you head over there when you're done?" "Thank you," Emma replied, managing a small smile. "That's very kind." As the officer continued his patrol, Emma looked up at the sky. Dark clouds were gathering, threatening rain or perhaps even snow. The weather forecast had predicted the first winter storm of the season, and she dreaded the thought of being caught in it with nowhere proper to go. She sold 3 pieces of candy to a couple from Texas who took pity on her condition. earning $6 that would help buy ingredients for tomorrow's batch. As she counted the crumpled bills, Emma allowed herself a moment to imagine a different life. One where she was still in high school, preparing for prom and college applications, where her biggest worry was a math test, or whether James Mitchell would ask her to the winter formal. The first drops of rain began to fall, cold and sharp against her face. Emma quickly covered her candy box with a plastic bag and started walking toward the shelter, her steps careful and deliberate on the increasingly slippery sidewalk. The baby kicked again, more forcefully this time, and she paused to rest against a storefront window. Inside the warmly lit shop, she could see families browsing through country music memorabilia, their faces bright with vacation excitement. Children pressed their noses against the glass, pointing at guitars signed by famous musicians. Emma wondered what it would feel like to be so carefree, to have the luxury of worry-free leisure time and disposable income. As she resumed walking, a particularly strong gust of wind nearly knocked her off balance. She steadied herself against a lamppost, breathing heavily. The rain was becoming more intense, and she realized she needed to find shelter quickly. The baby's kicks were becoming more frequent, and she felt a strange tightness in her lower back that hadn't been there before. Emma Catherine Sullivan pulled her coat tighter once more and continued her journey through the darkening streets of Nashville, unaware that her life was about to change in the most unexpected way. The city's neon lights blurred through her rain-soaked eyes, but she pressed on, carrying not just her unborn child, but also her dreams of somehow creating a better future for them both. The wind howled between the buildings, carrying with it the distant sound of music and laughter from the venues along Broadway. For Emma, however, the night promised only cold, uncertainty, and the constant worry that plagued every young woman facing motherhood alone. She had no way of knowing that forces beyond her understanding were already in motion, that compassion and kindness were about to intersect with her path in the most remarkable way. The rain transformed into a relentless downpour as Emma reached the corner of 5th and Church Street. Her thin coat was soaked through, and water dripped from her auburn hair onto her face. The baby seemed to sense the urgency of the situation, moving restlessly within her womb. Emma's breathing became more labored as she climbed the steps of the Covenant House, her temporary sanctuary in a world that seemed increasingly hostile to her circumstances. Inside the shelter, the familiar smell of disinfectant and institutional cooking greeted her. The building housed 32 young people between the ages of 16 and 21, all facing their own unique struggles. Emma had learned to navigate the complex social dynamics of shelter life, the alliances, the conflicts, and the unspoken rules that governed their shared space. Sarah Michelle Rodriguez, her bunkmate and closest friend in the shelter, was sitting on her bed reading a worn paperback novel when Emma entered their room. Sarah was 19, had aged out of foster care the previous year, and was working toward her GED while employed part-time at a downtown diner. "Girl, you look like you've been swimming in your clothes," Sarah said, looking up from her book with concern. "How much did you make tonight?" Emma peeled off her wet coat and hung it on the hook beside her narrow bed. $6. Not much, but it's something. Sarah shook her head sympathetically. "You need to think about other options, Emma. This weather is only going to get worse, and you're 7 months pregnant. Walking around in the cold and rain isn't safe for you or the baby." The room was small and sparse, 2 single beds, a shared dresser, and a small window that looked out onto an alley. Emma sat heavily on her bed, feeling the familiar ache in her lower back intensify. She placed both hands on her swollen abdomen, trying to calm the increasingly active baby. "I know," she whispered, tears mixing with the rainwater on her cheeks. "But what else can I do? Mrs. Patterson keeps talking about adoption, but I can't bear the thought of giving up my baby. And I certainly can't go back to my parents." The memory of her last conversation with her mother still haunted her. 3 weeks ago, Emma had called home, hoping that time and distance might have softened their hearts. Her mother, Margaret, had answered the phone with a cold, distant voice. "Emma, your father and I have been praying about this situation," Margaret had said, her words carefully measured. "We believe that the best thing for everyone involved would be for you to place the child with a good Christian family and then start fresh somewhere else. We've spoken to Pastor Williams, and he knows of several families who would be willing to adopt. But Mom, Emma had pleaded, this is your grandchild. Doesn't that mean anything to you? There had been a long silence before her mother responded. The child is innocent in all of this, Emma. But your choices have consequences. Until you're willing to do the right thing and fix this mistake, we can't be part of your life. The line had gone dead, and Emma hadn't tried calling again. Now, sitting in the shelter as the storm intensified outside, Emma felt more isolated than ever. Sarah reached across the space between their beds and squeezed Emma's hand. Whatever you decide, you're not alone, Sarah said firmly. You've got more strength than you know, and that baby is lucky to have you as a mother. Down the hall, they could hear the familiar evening sounds of shelter life. Someone practicing guitar, a heated discussion about television channels, the quiet sobs of a new arrival dealing with their own crisis. Emma had learned that everyone here carried invisible wounds, stories of family rejection, abuse, addiction, or simply the cruel randomness of poverty and circumstance. Mrs. Catherine Williams, the night supervisor, knocked gently on their doorframe. She was a kind woman in her 50s who had dedicated her life to helping young people in crisis. Her salt and pepper hair was always pulled back in a neat bun, and her warm brown eyes held a mixture of compassion and firm authority. Emma, honey, how are you feeling tonight? Mrs. Williams asked, stepping into the room. You look a bit pale. Emma tried to smile. Just tired. The walking in the rain was harder than usual. Mrs. Williams frowned with concern. Your due date is getting closer. Have you been to the clinic for your regular checkup? I have an appointment next week, Emma replied, though she wasn't sure how she would afford the bus fare to get there. I want you to promise me something, Mrs. Williams said, sitting on the edge of Emma's bed. If you start experiencing any unusual pain, or if the baby's movements change dramatically, you need to tell me immediately. Promise? Emma nodded, touched by the older woman's genuine concern. Mrs. Williams had been the closest thing to a mother figure she'd had since leaving home, always checking on her well-being and making sure she had access to prenatal vitamins and proper nutrition. As Mrs. Williams left to continue her rounds, Emma changed into dry clothes and lay down on her bed. The baby's movements had settled somewhat, but she could feel periodic tightening sensations across her abdomen. She tried to remember what she had learned in the childbirth preparation class she had attended at the community health center. Sarah turned off the overhead light, leaving only the small lamp beside her bed illuminated. Emma, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you ever dream about what your life would be like if things were different? Like, if your parents had reacted differently, or if Marcus had stayed? Emma stared at the water stains on the ceiling, considering the question. All the time. But then I think about this little person inside me, and I realize that maybe things happened the way they were supposed to. Maybe I needed to become stronger, more independent. Maybe this baby needs me to be the kind of mother who doesn't give up, no matter how hard things get. The storm outside had intensified, with thunder rolling across the Nashville sky and lightning occasionally illuminating their small room. Emma listened to the rhythm of the rain against their window and tried to imagine a future where she and her baby were safe, warm, and loved. 20 blocks away, in a beautiful home in the Belmead neighborhood, Rebecca Louise McEntire, known to the world as Reba McEntire, was also listening to the storm. She stood in her home studio, looking out at her manicured garden being battered by the wind and rain. At 68 years old, Reba had achieved more success than most people could dream of. Multiple Grammy Awards, a successful acting career, business ventures, and the love and respect of millions of fans worldwide. But tonight, she felt restless. Something was stirring in her heart, a feeling she had learned over the years not to ignore. It was the same feeling she had experienced before some of the most significant moments of her career and personal life. A sense that change was coming, that God was preparing to use her in some new way. Her manager, David Thompson, had called earlier to discuss her upcoming Christmas special and the charity events planned for the holiday season. Reba had always been generous with her time and resources, supporting various causes, including literacy programs, disaster relief, and scholarships for underprivileged students. "You know, David," she had said during their conversation, "I feel like there's something more I'm supposed to be doing. I can't put my finger on it, but I have this sense that someone out there needs help, and I'm meant to provide it." David, who had worked with Reba for over a decade, was accustomed to her intuitive nature and her ability to sense when someone was in need. "Well, Reba, you know that your heart usually leads you in the right direction. Just stay open to whatever opportunities present themselves." Now, as she watched the storm rage outside, Reba felt that same stirring even more strongly. She moved to her piano and began playing softly, letting the music flow through her fingers as she often did when she needed clarity. The melody that emerged was gentle and hopeful, like a lullaby for someone who needed comfort. Back at the shelter, Emma had finally drifted off to sleep, one hand resting protectively on her belly. In her dreams, she saw herself holding a healthy baby, surrounded by people who loved and supported them both. She didn't know that across the city, a woman with the power to change her life was awake, praying for guidance and preparing for a divine appointment that would alter the course of both their futures. The storm continued to rage through the night, washing the streets of Nashville clean and setting the stage for an encounter that would restore faith in human kindness and prove that miracles often come disguised as ordinary acts of compassion. The next morning dawned gray and overcast, with remnants of the previous night's storm evident in the puddles that dotted the sidewalks and the debris scattered across the streets of downtown Nashville. Emma woke with a dull ache in her lower back and the familiar sensation of her baby's morning movements. At nearly 8 months pregnant, every day brought new challenges and discomforts, but she had learned to push through them. After a breakfast of instant oatmeal and orange juice provided by the shelter, Emma prepared for another day of trying to sell her homemade candies. She had managed to make a fresh batch the evening before, using the last of her sugar and peppermint extract. The small cardboard box now contained 24 carefully wrapped pieces, her potential income for the day. Sarah was getting ready for her shift at Murphy's Diner on Charlotte Avenue, where she worked as a server. "Emma, why don't you try a different location today? Maybe somewhere with more foot traffic, like outside the Country Music Hall of Fame, or near the Ryman Auditorium." Emma considered the suggestion as she laced up her worn sneakers. "Those areas have more security. They might not want someone like me hanging around." "You won't know unless you try," Sarah replied, adjusting her uniform and grabbing her purse. "Besides, you're not doing anything wrong. You're working hard to provide for your baby." After Sarah left for work, Emma gathered her supplies and ventured out into the crisp November air. The temperature had dropped significantly overnight, and she could see her breath forming small clouds as she walked. The baby seemed more active than usual, perhaps responding to the cold or to Emma's own increased stress levels. She decided to take Sarah's advice and walked toward the touristy section of downtown, where the Country Music Hall of Fame and the historic Ryman Auditorium drew visitors from around the world. The streets were busier here, with people bundled up against the cold, many carrying cameras and guidebooks. Emma positioned herself near the entrance to a small coffee shop called The Grind, hoping to catch people as they went in for their morning caffeine fix. The owner, Thomas Mitchell, was a kind man in his 50s who had noticed her before and never asked her to move along. "Morning, Emma," he called out as he propped open the door to his shop. "Cold one today, isn't it?" "Yes, sir," she replied, grateful for his acknowledgement. "I'll stay out of your customers' way." "You're not bothering anyone, honey. You let me know if you need anything." Emma had been standing outside for about an hour, managing to sell only 2 pieces of candy, when she noticed a woman approaching from across the street. The woman was dressed elegantly but casually in dark jeans, expensive-looking boots, and a camel-colored coat that looked warm and luxurious. Her reddish-brown hair was styled perfectly despite the wind, and there was something familiar about her confident stride. As the woman got closer, Emma's heart began to race. She recognized that face from countless album covers, television appearances, and magazine features. It was Reba McEntire, one of the most beloved figures in country music, and someone Emma had admired since childhood. Her grandmother Dorothy had been a huge fan, and they had listened to Reba's music together on countless afternoons. Reba was walking toward the coffee shop, probably for a private meeting, or just to escape the scrutiny that came with her celebrity status. Emma felt simultaneously starstruck and mortified. Here she was, a pregnant teenager selling candy on the street, about to encounter one of her heroes. As Reba approached the coffee shop entrance, her eyes met Emma's. There was something in that moment, a connection that transcended the obvious differences in their circumstances. Reba slowed her pace, and Emma could see genuine curiosity and concern in her famous blue eyes. "Good morning," Reba said warmly, her distinctive voice instantly recognizable. "What are you selling there, honey?" Emma's mouth went dry, and for a moment she couldn't speak. Finally, she managed to stammer, "Homemade peppermint candies, ma'am. $2 each." Reba stepped closer, studying Emma's face with the keen perception that had made her such a compelling performer and storyteller. She could see the exhaustion, the worry, but also the determination and dignity that Emma was trying so hard to maintain. "How old are you, sweetie?" Reba asked gently. 17, Emma replied, unconsciously placing a protective hand on her belly. Reba's heart clenched as she took in the full picture. This young woman, barely more than a child herself, trying to make a living on the streets while carrying a baby. It reminded her of some of the songs she had sung throughout her career, stories of struggle and survival that resonated with so many of her fans. "What's your name?" "Emma Catherine Sullivan," she answered, gaining a bit more confidence. "That's a beautiful name." "I'm Reba," she said, even though she knew that Emma had already recognized her. "I know who you are, Miss McEntire. My grandmother and I used to listen to your music all the time. She always said you sang like you understood what real life was about." Reba smiled, touched by the connection to Emma's grandmother. "She sounds like she was a wise woman. Is she still with you?" Emma's eyes filled with tears. "No, ma'am. She passed away 2 years ago. She was the one who taught me how to make these candies." The wind picked up, causing Emma to shiver and pull her thin coat tighter around her body. Reba noticed immediately how inadequate her clothing was for the weather, how her shoes were worn thin, and how she was trying so hard to appear strong despite her obvious vulnerability. "Emma, would you mind if I bought some of your candy? But more than that, would you be willing to sit with me for a few minutes? There's a warm cafe right here, and I'd love to hear more about you and your grandmother." Emma's eyes widened in disbelief. You want to have coffee with me?" "I'd be honored," Reba replied sincerely. As they entered the grind, Thomas Mitchell's eyes nearly popped out of his head when he saw who had walked in with Emma. He managed to maintain his composure, though, and greeted them both warmly. "Miss McEntire, what an unexpected pleasure," he said. "And Emma, good to see you getting out of the cold." Reba ordered a hot chocolate for Emma and a coffee for herself, insisting on paying for both. They found a quiet table in the corner, away from the few other customers in the cafe. As they settled into their seats, Emma felt overwhelmed by the surreal nature of the situation. "So, tell me about your grandmother," Reba said, stirring her coffee and giving Emma her full attention. Emma's face brightened as she began to share memories of Dorothy Mae Sullivan. "She was amazing. She raised 5 children, mostly by herself after my grandfather died in Vietnam. She could make something delicious out of nothing, and she always had time to listen to my problems. These candies were her specialty. She used to make them for church fundraisers and bake sales." "And she taught you the recipe?" "Yes, ma'am. Every step of it. She said it was important for women to know how to take care of themselves and their families, no matter what life threw at them." Reba nodded approvingly. "Smart woman. What happened to your parents, Emma? Are they helping you through this difficult time?" Emma's expression darkened, and she looked down at her hands wrapped around the warm mug. They don't approve of my situation. When they found out I was pregnant, they asked me to leave. Reba felt a surge of anger on Emma's behalf, but she kept her voice calm and supportive. That must have been incredibly painful. It was. I keep thinking maybe they'll change their minds, especially when the baby comes. But my mother made it pretty clear that they consider this a mistake that needs to be fixed. And what do you think, Emma? Do you consider your baby a mistake? Emma's hand moved instinctively to her belly, and for the first time since their conversation began, she smiled genuinely. No, ma'am. Scared as I am, I love this little person already. I may not have planned this, and I may not know exactly how I'm going to manage, but this baby is not a mistake. Reba felt her heart swell with admiration for this young woman's strength and maternal instinct. She thought of her own journey as a mother, the challenges and joys, and how blessed she had been to have support from family and friends. "Where are you living now?" Reba asked. "At the Covenant House downtown. It's a shelter for young people. They've been very kind to me, but I know I can't stay there forever." As Emma spoke, Reba studied her face, noting the intelligence in her green eyes, the careful way she chose her words, and the underlying strength that seemed to sustain her despite her circumstances. This wasn't a case of a reckless teenager making poor choices. This was a young woman who had found herself in an impossible situation and was doing everything in her power to create a better future for her child. "Emma, can I ask you something?" Reba said, leaning forward slightly. "Of course. If you could have anything right now, anything at all for you and your baby, what would it be?" Emma considered the question carefully, as if she were afraid to voice her deepest hopes out loud. Finally, she spoke softly. "A safe place to live, a chance to finish my education somehow, and the opportunity to be the kind of mother my baby deserves, one who can provide for them and love them unconditionally." Reba felt something shift inside her chest, that same stirring she had experienced the night before during the storm. She realized that this encounter wasn't coincidental. It was exactly what she had been feeling called toward. Emma Catherine Sullivan represented everything Reba believed in: courage, determination, and the refusal to give up in the face of overwhelming odds. "Emma," Reba said, her voice filled with conviction, "I believe God put us in each other's path today for a reason." Emma looked up, hope and confusion mixing in her expression. She had no idea that her life was about to change in ways she never could have imagined, that the woman sitting across from her was about to become the answer to prayers she hadn't even dared to pray. Outside, the gray November day continued, but inside the grind, warmth and possibility filled the small space between two women whose lives were about to become beautifully intertwined. As their conversation continued in the cozy corner of the grind, Reba found herself increasingly moved by Emma's story and impressed by her maturity despite her young age. The cafe had filled with the morning crowd, but the two women remained absorbed in their discussion, oblivious to the curious glances from other customers who recognized the famous country star. "Emma, tell me more about your dreams," Reba said, wrapping her hands around her coffee mug. "Before all of this happened, what did you want to do with your life?" Emma's eyes lit up as she spoke about her previous aspirations. "I wanted to be a teacher, actually, elementary school. I love working with children, and I've always been good at explaining things in ways that make sense to them. I was planning to go to Middle Tennessee State University after graduation. I had decent grades, mostly A's and B's." "That's wonderful," Reba replied genuinely. "Teaching is one of the most important professions there is. What made you interested in education?" "My grandmother, mostly. She only had an 8th grade education, but she was one of the smartest people I ever knew. She always said that education was the one thing nobody could ever take away from you, and that knowledge was power. She made me promise that I would go to college, no matter what obstacles I faced." Reba felt a deep respect for Dorothy Mae Sullivan, a woman she had never met but whose influence was clearly evident in her granddaughter's character and values. "She sounds like she was an extraordinary woman." She was. "She would have loved this baby so much," Emma said, her voice breaking slightly. "Sometimes I talk to her, you know, I tell her about what's happening and ask her what I should do. What do you think she would tell you now? Emma was quiet for a moment, considering. She would tell me to keep my chin up, to never give up on my dreams, and to remember that being a mother is the most important job I'll ever have. But it doesn't mean I have to stop growing and learning. As Emma spoke, Reba was struck by a sudden inspiration. She thought about her various charitable endeavors, her resources, and her ability to make a real difference in someone's life. More than that, she thought about the purpose she had been feeling called toward lately. The sense that God was asking her to do something more personal and direct than writing checks to organizations. Emma, I need to ask you something, and I want you to think carefully before you answer, Reba said, her voice serious but warm. How would you feel about having some help, real help, in achieving those dreams you just described? Emma looked puzzled. What kind of help? The kind that would give you and your baby a safe place to live, access to health care, educational opportunities, and the support system you need to become the mother and the teacher you want to be. Emma's heart began to race. Miss McEntire, I don't understand what you're saying. Reba reached across the table and gently took Emma's hand. I'm saying that I would like to help you, not just with money or a temporary solution, but with a real chance at the life you deserve. Tears began to stream down Emma's face. But why? You don't even know me. I know enough, Reba replied firmly. I know that you're brave enough to leave home rather than compromise your values. I know that you're working hard to provide for your baby, even though you're still a child yourself. I know that you honor your grandmother's memory by holding on to your dreams, even when everything seems impossible. And I know that you have the kind of character that can't be taught. It's either there or it isn't, and you have it in abundance. Emma couldn't speak through her tears. The weight of months of fear, uncertainty, and loneliness seemed to be lifting from her shoulders, replaced by something she hadn't felt in a very long time. Hope. I have a proposal for you, Reba continued. I have a guest house on my property in Belmead. It's small but comfortable. 2 bedrooms, a kitchen, a living area. You could live there through your pregnancy and after the baby is born. In exchange, once you're physically able, you could help me with some administrative work, answering fan mail, organizing my charitable activities, that sort of thing. It would give you work experience and allow you to earn money while taking care of your baby. Emma stared at Reba in disbelief. You're offering me a place to live? And a job? More than that. I want to help you continue your education. There are excellent online programs that would allow you to earn your high school diploma and then start working toward a teaching degree. I have connections at several universities that might be able to help with scholarships and flexible scheduling. The baby chose that moment to kick strongly, as if responding to the conversation. Emma placed her hand on her belly and felt a surge of gratitude that threatened to overwhelm her. Miss McEntire, this is incredibly generous, but I can't accept charity. I need to earn my way. Reba smiled, admiring Emma's pride and work ethic. This isn't charity, Emma. This is an investment in someone who reminds me why I do what I do. Besides, you'll be working for what I'm offering. And I have a feeling that you'll give back far more than you receive. Emma wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, trying to process the magnitude of what was being offered. What about your privacy? Your security? Surely your management and your family would have concerns about bringing a stranger into your life like this. Let me worry about those details, Reba said. The important question is whether you're willing to accept help, and whether you're ready to work hard to build a better future for yourself and your baby. I don't know what to say. This doesn't seem real. Reba pulled out her phone and showed Emma some photos of the guest house. It was a charming, small building with white siding and green shutters, surrounded by mature trees. The interior shots revealed a cozy living space with comfortable furniture, a well-equipped kitchen, and 2 bedrooms that were tastefully decorated. The larger bedroom has its own bathroom, and there's a smaller room that would make a perfect nursery, Reba explained. There's also a washer and dryer, and the kitchen is fully stocked with everything you'd need. Emma studied the photos, hardly daring to believe that this beautiful, safe space could be hers. When would this start? I mean, if I said yes? Today, if you want. I can drive you to the shelter to get your things and we can have you settled in by this evening. The reality of the offer began to sink in. Emma would have a clean, warm place to live, medical care for her pregnancy, and the opportunity to continue her education. More importantly, her baby would be safe and cared for. "Miss McEntire," Emma said, her voice shaking with emotion, "I don't know how I could ever repay you for something like this. You repay me by taking advantage of the opportunity, by being the best mother you can be, by finishing your education, and by someday helping someone else who finds themselves in a similar situation. That's how kindness works. It gets passed along from one person to another." Emma thought about her grandmother's teachings, about the importance of accepting help graciously when it was offered with genuine love, and about the responsibility that came with second chances. "Yes," she whispered, and then louder, "Yes, I accept your offer, and I promise you won't regret it." Reba squeezed Emma's hand. "I know I won't regret it. I have a good feeling about you, Emma Catherine Sullivan. I think you're going to do amazing things with your life." As they prepared to leave the cafe, Thomas Mitchell approached their table with a warm smile. "Ladies, I hope you don't mind, but I couldn't help overhearing part of your conversation. Emma, I've been watching you for weeks, admiring your determination and your dignity. Miss McEntire, what you're doing for this young lady, well, it restores my faith in humanity." Reba stood and shook his hand. "Sometimes we're put in positions where we can help, and it's our responsibility to act on it. Emma," Thomas continued, "you take care of yourself and that baby, and if you ever need anything, a warm meal, a place to sit for a while, you know where to find me." Emma hugged the cafe owner, overwhelmed by the kindness of strangers who had become unexpected angels in her life. "Thank you, Mr. Mitchell, for everything." As they stepped outside into the crisp November air, Reba's black SUV was waiting at the curb, driven by her security detail, Marcus Johnson. Marcus was a former police officer who had worked for Reba for 5 years, and she trusted him implicitly with sensitive situations. "Marcus, I'd like you to meet Emma Sullivan," Reba said as they approached the vehicle. "She's going to be staying in the guest house and helping me with some projects." Marcus, a tall African-American man in his 40s, smiled warmly and opened the door for both women. "Pleasure to meet you, Miss Sullivan. Welcome to the team." During the drive to the Covenant House, Reba explained more about the practical aspects of her offer. "Dr. Patricia Williams is my personal physician, and she's also an excellent obstetrician. I've already called her office, and they can see you this afternoon if you'd like. She delivers at Vanderbilt University Medical Center, which is one of the best hospitals in the region." Emma listened in amazement as Reba continued outlining the support system she was offering. "My assistant, Jennifer Clark, will help you get set up with everything you need: identification documents, healthcare enrollment, educational consultations. She's wonderful at navigating bureaucracy." "This is all happening so fast," Emma said, placing her hand on her belly as the baby kicked. "I keep thinking I'm going to wake up and find out this was all a dream." "It's not a dream, honey. Sometimes life changes quickly, and we have to be brave enough to embrace those changes." When they arrived at the Covenant House, Mrs. Catherine Williams was waiting in the lobby, having been alerted by Emma's brief phone call that she would be moving out. Her expression was a mixture of happiness for Emma and concern about the sudden nature of the change. "Emma, are you absolutely certain about this decision?" Mrs. Williams asked, glancing curiously at Reba. "Mrs. Williams, I'd like you to meet Reba McEntire," Emma said, her voice still filled with wonder at saying those words. Mrs. Williams's eyes widened in recognition, but she maintained her professional composure. "Ms. McEntire, it's an honor to meet you. I need to ask you some questions about this arrangement, for Emma's protection." Reba appreciated the woman's protective instincts. "Of course. What would you like to know?" They sat in the shelter's small conference room, while Mrs. Williams conducted what amounted to an interview, asking about living arrangements, expectations, and safeguards. Reba answered every question thoroughly and provided references, including her attorney and her longtime manager. "I'll need to contact these references," Mrs. Williams said, "but assuming everything checks out, I think this could be a wonderful opportunity for Emma. She's one of the most mature and determined young women I've ever worked with." While the adults talked, Emma went upstairs to pack her few belongings. Sarah was waiting in their room, having heard the news from another resident who had seen the black SUV outside. "Emma, girl, you need to tell me everything," Sarah exclaimed, pulling her friend into a hug. "Reba McEntire? Are you serious?" Emma quickly recounted the morning's events as she gathered her clothes and personal items. Everything she owned fit into 2 small duffel bags and a cardboard box, a testament to how much her life had been stripped down to the essentials. "I can't believe this is happening," Emma said, carefully packing her grandmother's recipe box and a few photographs. "What if I mess this up? What if I'm not good enough for this opportunity?" Sarah grabbed Emma by the shoulders and looked her in the eye. "Listen to me. You are smart, you are strong, and you deserve good things to happen to you. Don't you dare let fear make you sabotage this chance. What about you? I feel terrible leaving you here. Don't you worry about me. I'm going to be fine, and knowing that you and that baby are safe and cared for is going to make me happy every single day." "Besides," Sarah grinned, "now I know a famous person. That's pretty cool." The goodbye was emotional, but hopeful. Emma promised to stay in touch and to visit when she could. Mrs. Williams gave her a long hug and made her promise to call if she ever needed anything. As they drove through Nashville toward Belle Meade, Emma watched the scenery change from the urban downtown area to increasingly affluent neighborhoods with larger homes and manicured lawns. The contrast to her recent living situation was stark, and she felt a mixture of excitement and intimidation. "Nervous?" Reba asked, noticing Emma's quiet observation of their surroundings. "A little. I've never lived anywhere like this. What if I don't fit in?" "You don't need to fit in anywhere except in your own skin," Reba replied. "You're not trying to become someone else, Emma. You're just getting the chance to become the best version of yourself." When they turned into Reba's driveway, Emma gasped at the beauty of the property. The main house was a stately colonial structure surrounded by rolling lawns and mature oak trees. To the right, partially hidden by a grove of maple trees, was the guest house, exactly as beautiful as it had appeared in the photographs. "Welcome home," Reba said softly as Marcus parked the SUV in front of the guest house. The interior of the small house was even more welcoming than Emma had imagined. The living room was decorated in warm earth tones with comfortable furniture and soft lighting. The kitchen was small, but equipped with everything she could need. The master bedroom had a queen-sized bed with a quilted comforter, and the second bedroom was already set up as a nursery with a crib, changing table, and rocking chair. "You did all this today?" Emma asked in amazement. "I made a few phone calls," Reba said with a smile. "I have people who can make things happen quickly when needed." Emma walked to the nursery window and looked out at the garden beyond. The baby kicked strongly, as if approving of their new surroundings. For the first time in months, Emma felt truly safe and hopeful about the future. "Miss McEntire, please call me Reba. Reba, I promise you that I'll work hard and that I'll make the most of this opportunity. I won't let you down." "I know you won't, honey. Now let's get you settled in, and then we'll go see Dr. Williams for your checkup. After that, we'll start planning for the future, yours and your baby's." As Emma unpacked her few belongings in her new home, she felt her grandmother's presence strongly. Dorothy Mae Sullivan had always believed that good things came to good people, that hard work and decent character would eventually be rewarded. Emma whispered a quiet thank you to her grandmother and to whatever force had brought Reba McEntire into her life at exactly the moment when she needed hope the most. Outside, the November afternoon was growing shorter, but inside the guest house, warmth and possibility filled every room. Emma Catherine Sullivan was about to begin a new chapter of her life, one that would prove that sometimes angels come disguised as country music stars with big hearts and an unshakable belief in the power of second chances. 3 weeks had passed since Emma moved into the guest house, and the transformation in her life felt miraculous. Dr. Patricia Williams had pronounced both Emma and the baby healthy, with an estimated due date in early January. The regular medical care, proper nutrition, and reduced stress had already improved Emma's overall well-being dramatically. The morning routine that had developed felt natural and comfortable. Emma would wake up in her cozy bedroom, make breakfast in her fully equipped kitchen, and then walk the short path to the main house where she worked in Reba's home office for 4 hours each day. The work was engaging and meaningful, responding to fan letters, organizing charitable donations, and helping coordinate Reba's various philanthropic activities. "Emma, could you come look at this letter?" Reba called from her desk one Tuesday morning in early December. The home office was a warm, book-lined room with awards and gold records displayed alongside family photographs and artwork created by children from various charities Reba supported. Emma, now 8.5 months pregnant, walked carefully to where Reba sat reading a handwritten letter. Her maternity clothes were new and comfortable, purchased during a shopping trip with Jennifer Clark, Reba's assistant, who had become another maternal figure in Emma's rapidly expanding support system. "This letter is from a teenage mother in Kentucky," Reba explained. "She heard about our work together somehow, probably through social media, and she's asking for advice about continuing her education while raising her baby." Emma read the letter carefully, her heart aching for the young woman's struggles that were so similar to what she had experienced just months earlier. "What if we created a formal program?" Emma suggested. "Something that could help other young mothers get the support they need?" Reba's face lit up with excitement. "Tell me more about what you're thinking." Emma had been pondering this idea for weeks as she worked with Reba's existing charitable activities. "We could call it the Dorothy Mae Sullivan Foundation, after my grandmother. It could provide housing assistance, educational scholarships, childcare support, and mentorship for teenage mothers who want to build better lives for themselves and their children." "That's a beautiful way to honor your grandmother's memory," Reba said, clearly moved by the idea. "And you're absolutely right that there's a huge need for this kind of comprehensive support." Over the following days, Emma and Reba worked together to develop a detailed plan for the foundation. Emma's personal experience with the challenges facing young mothers, combined with Reba's resources and connections, created a powerful partnership. They consulted with social workers, educators, and other nonprofit organizations to ensure their approach would be both effective and sustainable. Dr. Williams visited the guest house regularly now, monitoring Emma's pregnancy as her due date approached. During her most recent visit, she had been impressed not only with Emma's physical health, but also with her emotional transformation. "You're glowing, Emma," Dr. Williams said after completing her examination. "The stress reduction and emotional support you're receiving here is having a tremendous positive impact on both you and the baby. I feel like a completely different person than I was 3 months ago," Emma replied, her hand resting on her prominently swollen belly. "I have hope again, and dreams that seem actually achievable." Reba had been present for the appointment, as she often was, taking her role as Emma's mentor and supporter very seriously. "Dr. Williams, Emma has been working on plans for a foundation to help other young mothers. Would you be interested in serving on our medical advisory board?" "I would be honored," Dr. Williams replied immediately. "There's definitely a need for the kind of comprehensive support you're describing." That evening, as Emma prepared dinner in her kitchen, a skill she had been developing with enthusiasm, she received an unexpected phone call. The number wasn't familiar, but she answered anyway. "Emma, this is your mother." Emma's heart stopped. She hadn't heard from Margaret Sullivan since that terrible phone call months earlier. "Mom? I've been thinking about you. A friend of mine saw something on Facebook about you and Reba McEntire. Is it true that you're living with her?" Emma wasn't sure how to respond. Her relationship with her parents was still a source of deep pain, despite all the positive changes in her life. "I'm living on her property and working for her, yes." "Emma, I owe you an apology. Your father and we were so shocked, so concerned about what people would think, that we forgot the most important thing, that you're our daughter and we love you." Tears began to flow down Emma's cheeks. "Mom, let me finish, please. We were wrong to ask you to leave. We were wrong to make you feel like you had to choose between our love and your baby. and we were wrong to let our pride keep us from reaching out sooner." Emma sat down heavily on her couch, overwhelmed by emotions she had tried to suppress for months. "I've missed you so much." "We've missed you too, honey. Your father wants to talk to you, but he's having trouble finding the words. Would it be possible? Could we visit you? Could we meet our grandchild?" The conversation continued for over an hour, with both women crying, apologizing, and beginning the difficult process of rebuilding their relationship. Margaret explained that they had been following Emma's story through social media posts by Reba's fans, and seeing their daughter's courage and determination had forced them to confront their own failures as parents. When Reba stopped by that evening to discuss foundation business, she found Emma still emotional from the phone call with her mother. "That's wonderful news, Emma," Reba said after hearing about the conversation. "Family relationships are complicated, but love usually finds a way to overcome pride and fear. I'm nervous about seeing them again," Emma admitted. "What if things are still awkward? What if they're only reaching out because of my connection to you?" "Then you'll deal with that if it happens," Reba replied pragmatically. "But I suspect your parents have done some real soul-searching over these past months. Sometimes people need time to realize what's truly important." 2 days later, Margaret and Robert Sullivan arrived at Reba's property, looking nervous and uncertain as they approached the guest house. Emma watched from her window as they got out of their car, noting how much older they looked and how hesitant their movements were. When Emma opened the door, the first thing her mother did was gasp at how beautiful she looked. The healthy glow of her late pregnancy, combined with the confidence and peace she had found, had transformed her appearance dramatically. "Oh, Emma," Margaret whispered, reaching out to touch her daughter's face. "You look radiant." Robert Sullivan, a man who had always prided himself on his emotional control, broke down completely when he saw his daughter. "Emma, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for everything." The reunion was emotional and healing, with months of hurt and misunderstanding beginning to dissolve through honest conversation and genuine remorse. When Reba joined them for dinner, she was gracious and welcoming, helping to facilitate the family's reconciliation without making it about herself. "Miss McEntire," Robert said during dinner, "I can never adequately express our gratitude for what you've done for our daughter. You stepped in and provided the support and love that we should have given her." "Emma didn't need fixing, Mr. Sullivan," Reba replied gently. "She just needed someone to believe in her and give her a chance. The strength and character were already there." A week later, on December 15th, Emma woke up in the early morning hours with strong contractions. The baby had decided to arrive 2 weeks early, and Emma felt a mixture of excitement and terror as she realized labor was beginning. Reba drove her to Vanderbilt University Medical Center, staying with her throughout the entire labor and delivery process. Dr. Williams was calm and encouraging, helping Emma through each contraction with professional expertise and personal warmth. At 2:47 p.m., Emma Catherine Sullivan gave birth to a healthy baby girl weighing 6 pounds, 12 ounces. As she held her daughter for the first time, Emma felt overwhelmed by love and gratitude for the journey that had brought them to this moment. "What are you going to name her?" Reba asked, tears streaming down her face as she watched the new mother bond with her baby. Emma looked down at her daughter's perfect face, then up at the woman who had changed both their lives forever. "Dorothy Reba Sullivan, after my grandmother and the woman who saved us both." 6 months later, the Dorothy Mae Sullivan Foundation officially launched with Emma as its program director and Reba as its founding benefactor. The foundation's first residential facility opened in Nashville, providing housing, education, and support services for 20 young mothers and their children. Emma had completed her high school diploma online and was enrolled in early childhood education courses at Nashville State Community College, taking classes part-time while working for the foundation and caring for little Dorothy, who was already showing signs of her mother's intelligence and determination. The foundation's work attracted national attention, with similar programs being established in other cities across the country. Emma found herself speaking at conferences and universities, sharing her story and advocating for comprehensive support systems for young mothers. Margaret and Robert Sullivan had become devoted grandparents, visiting regularly, and helping with childcare when Emma needed to travel for foundation business. Their relationship with their daughter was stronger than it had ever been, built on a foundation of mutual respect and unconditional love. On Dorothy's first birthday, the foundation held its first annual fundraising gala. The event raised over $2 million and attracted celebrities, politicians, and philanthropists from across the nation. During her speech that evening, Emma looked out at the crowd and reflected on the incredible journey that had brought her to this moment. Exactly 2 years ago, I was a frightened teenager standing on a street corner trying to sell candy to survive, she began, her voice strong and clear. I thought my life was over, that I had made irreversible mistakes that would define my future. But I learned that sometimes our greatest challenges become our greatest strengths, and that angels often appear when we least expect them, but need them most. She paused to look at Reba, who was sitting at the head table with tears in her eyes. Reba McEntire didn't just give me a place to live or a job. She gave me something infinitely more valuable. She gave me the belief that I was worthy of love, support, and second chances. She showed me that my past didn't have to determine my future, and that with hard work and the right support, anything is possible. As applause filled the ballroom, Emma continued, "Tonight, we celebrate not just the success of our foundation, but the power of human compassion to transform lives. Every young mother we help, every child who grows up in a stable, loving environment because of this work, every family that stays together because they received the support they needed. These are the real measures of our success." The evening raised enough money to expand the foundation's work to 3 additional cities, and more importantly, it established a sustainable model for supporting young mothers that other organizations could replicate. Years later, Emma would earn her master's degree in social work and become a nationally recognized advocate for young families. Little Dorothy would grow up surrounded by love and opportunity, eventually following in her mother's footsteps by dedicating her life to helping others. Reba McEntire continued her music career while remaining deeply involved in the foundation's work, often saying that meeting Emma was one of the most meaningful experiences of her life. The chance encounter on that cold November morning had reminded her that the most important performances happen not on stage, but in the quiet moments when we choose to extend kindness to someone in need. The Dorothy Mae Sullivan Foundation would go on to help thousands of young mothers over the years. But it all began with a simple act of compassion, a famous country singer who saw a pregnant teenager selling candy on the street and chose to stop, listen, and help. It was a reminder that sometimes the most profound changes in the world begin with one person deciding to care about another person's story. Emma often thought about that morning in the grind, when her life had seemed hopeless and her future uncertain. She remembered the warmth in Reba's voice, the genuine interest in her story, and the way she had been treated with dignity and respect when she felt most vulnerable. Those memories continued to guide her work with the foundation, ensuring that every young mother who walked through their doors received the same level of compassion and support that had changed her own life forever. As she tucked Dorothy into bed each night in their comfortable home, they had eventually moved to a larger house nearby while maintaining their close relationship with Reba. Emma would whisper the same words her grandmother had once shared with her. "Remember, sweetheart, that kindness is never wasted, that hard work pays off, and that no matter how difficult things seem, there's always hope for a better tomorrow." The story of Emma Catherine Sullivan and her daughter Dorothy Reba became a testament to the power of human compassion, the importance of second chances, and the truth that sometimes our greatest blessings come disguised as our most difficult challenges. It proved that one person's decision to care can create ripples of positive change that extend far beyond what they could ever imagine, touching lives and transforming communities for generations to come.